Everyday Canadian Phrases Episode 7, Café and Restaurant Phrases Ordering Food and Drinks with Canadian Politeness 1. Opening hello, and welcome back to Everyday Canadian Phrases. I'm glad you're here. Today we are going to spend some time in a place that looks simple, but actually gives you many opportunities to practice natural English, the café and the restaurant. Maybe you walk into a small coffee shop on a cold morning. You can smell fresh coffee. Someone is steaming milk behind the counter. There are people waiting in line. You look at the menu, and then you hear the person in front of you say, "Could I get a medium coffee, please?" The conversation lasts maybe 20 seconds. But inside those 20 seconds, there are many small pieces of English. How do you get the staff member's attention? How do you order? How do you ask about an ingredient? How do you say that you want something changed? How do you respond when the person asks, "Anything else?" How do you pay? And perhaps most importantly, how do you sound polite without sounding like you are reading from a grammar book? That is what we are going to practice today. This episode is called Café and Restaurant Phrases, and our focus is ordering food and drinks with Canadian politeness. When I say Canadian politeness, I do not mean that Canadians have a completely different English language. They do not. Canadians use the same basic English structures that you will hear in many other English-speaking countries. But there are certain habits that are especially common in everyday Canadian conversation. People often use soft expressions such as could I, can I, would it be possible, could you, I was wondering if, and would you mind. They also use small words such as please, thanks, sorry, and just in ways that help conversations feel less direct. For example, imagine you want a table. You could say, table for two. That sentence is understandable. But it can sound quite abrupt. A more natural version is, hi, could we get a table for two, please? Notice that the request is not complicated. You are simply adding a greeting, a polite request, and please. That small difference can change the feeling of the conversation. Today, I want you to pay attention to something very important. Good spoken English is not always about using difficult vocabulary. In fact, in a cafe or restaurant, some of the most useful English is extremely simple. Could I get a latte, please? Can I have this to go? Could we get some water? Is this spicy? Does this contain nuts? Could you leave off the onions? Can I get the bill, please? These are not advanced sentences. But they are powerful because you can use them again and again. And once you become comfortable with these patterns, you do not have to translate every sentence in your head. You can simply speak. That is our goal today. Not perfect English. Not fancy English. Natural English. There is also an important cultural point. When you are speaking another language, you may worry about being polite because you do not want to sound rude. That is completely understandable. But you do not need to make every sentence extremely formal. If you say, "Would you be so kind as to provide me with a cup of coffee," in a neighborhood cafe, your grammar may be correct, but you will probably sound much more formal than the situation requires. A natural Canadian speaker would probably say, "Could I get a coffee, please?" Simple. Friendly. Normal. That distinction between formal English and everyday English is something we will explore throughout this episode. We will also talk about restaurants, because ordering in a restaurant is slightly different from ordering at a cafe. At a cafe, the interaction is often fast. You order. You pay. You move aside. At a restaurant, the conversation can be longer. A server may ask whether you have any questions. They may explain the menu. You may ask for substitutions. You may need to tell them about an allergy. You may need to order for several people. And sometimes something goes wrong. Maybe your food arrives with onions even though you asked for no onions. Maybe your coffee is cold. Maybe you ordered something medium but received something large. These situations are excellent opportunities to learn polite English because you need to communicate a problem without sounding angry. So today, we will not simply memorize phrases. We will build a sense of how these conversations work. I will give you examples. I will slow down. I will explain why a phrase sounds natural. And I will give you moments to practice. When you hear a practice prompt, pause the episode if you need more time. Say your answer out loud. Do not only think about the answer. Speak it. Your mouth needs practice too. And remember something else. If you are listening from Canada, you will hear many different accents. You may hear Canadian-born speakers. You may hear immigrants who speak English with an accent from another language. You may hear regional differences. You may hear French-influenced English in some communities. You may hear people speaking very quickly. That is normal. Your goal is not to copy every accent. Your goal is to become comfortable communicating. If someone understands you, responds naturally, and the conversation continues, you are doing something right. So take a breath. Imagine you are standing at the counter of a cafe. There is a person in front of you. You are looking at the menu. Now it is your turn. You smile. You make eye contact. And you say, "Hi. Could I get a medium coffee, please?" That is where we begin. Now, let's move to the next part and look at the core concept behind polite ordering in Canadian English. 2. Core concept. Now let's move to the next part, the core concept. The most important idea in this episode is simple. When you order food or drinks in English, you are not only communicating what you want. You are managing a small social interaction. That means your words matter, but so does the way you organize them. Let's imagine that you walk into a cafe. You look at the person behind the counter and say, "Coffee." The person probably understands you. There is no serious grammar problem. But the sentence feels incomplete. It sounds more like a command or a label than a friendly request. Now listen to this, "Could I get a coffee, please?" The information is almost exactly the same. But the interaction feels different. "Could I get" turns the order into a request. "Please" adds another layer of politeness. And "hi" at the beginning can make it warmer. "Hi, could I get a coffee, please?" That is an extremely useful pattern. Now there are several ways to make an order. You can say, "Can I get?" You can say, "Could I get?" You can say, "Can I have?" You can say, "Could I have?" All four are common. For example, "Can I get a tea, please?" "Could I get a tea, please?" "Can I have a tea, please?" "Could I have a tea, please?" All of these can work. So which one should you use? For everyday Canadian English, "Can I get" and "Could I get" are especially useful. "Could I get" sounds slightly softer. "Can I get" sounds casual and natural. Neither one is strange. You may also hear Canadians say, "I'll have," for example, "I'll have the chicken sandwich, please." "I'll have a medium latte." "I'll have the soup." This is common in restaurants. It is not rude. It is simply a different structure. There is a small difference in feeling. "Could I get the chicken sandwich" sounds like a request. "I'll have the chicken sandwich" sounds like a decision. Both are perfectly normal. Now let's talk about one of the most important words in everyday ordering, just. You may hear, "Could I just get a small coffee?" "Can I just get the soup?" "I'll just have water." Here, "just" usually does not mean that the speaker thinks the item is unimportant. It often softens the request. It can make the sentence feel lighter. For example, "Can I get some ketchup?" is perfectly fine. "Can I just get some ketchup?" can sound a little more casual and less demanding. But you do not need to put "just" everywhere. If every sentence becomes "Can I just," your speech can sound repetitive. Use it naturally. Another useful idea is that English requests often have a soft opening. Instead of saying exactly what you want immediately, you can begin with, could I? Can I? Would it be possible to? I was wondering if, do you mind if? These structures allow you to ask for something without sounding too direct. For example, could I get a glass of water? Would it be possible to substitute fries for salad? I was wondering if I could get this without cheese. Do you mind if we sit outside? Each sentence has a slightly different level of formality. Let's focus on could I. This is probably one of your best friends in a Canadian restaurant. Could I get some water? Could I have another napkin? Could I get this to go? Could I ask what comes with the burger? Could I get the dressing on the side? Notice that you can use the same structure for many situations. This is why learning phrases as patterns is so useful. You do not need to memorize 50 separate sentences. Learn the structure, could I get plus thing? Then change the thing. Could I get a coffee? Could I get a sandwich? Could I get some water? Could I get the bill? Could I get a bag? Could I get a receipt? Now let's look at can I. Can I get a refill? Can I have some more water? Can I pay by card? Can I get this without dairy? Can I sit here? These are very natural. One common mistake among learners is believing that can I is somehow less polite because can technically relates to ability. In everyday spoken English, can I is completely normal for permission and requests. Nobody in a cafe is thinking about the difference between ability and permission when you say, can I get a latte? The expression is conventional. That means people use it because it sounds natural. Now let's look at may I. May I have a coffee, please? May I ask what is in this? May I sit here? These sentences are grammatically correct. But in a casual cafe, may I can sound more formal or old-fashioned than can I or could I. That does not make it wrong. It simply means you should match your language to the situation. If you are ordering coffee at a casual cafe, could I get a coffee, please, is usually more natural than may I have a coffee. This brings us to an important principle. Politeness is not the same thing as formality. You can be very polite using simple, casual English. Hi, could I get a large coffee, please? That is polite. You do not need complicated vocabulary. You do not need a long explanation. You do not need to apologize for existing. You simply make the request clearly and kindly. Now, let's talk about greetings. When you enter a restaurant, you may hear, "Hi, how are you?" "Hi, how's it going?" "Good evening." "Welcome in." You do not need a long answer. A simple, "Good, thanks." "How are you?" is enough. If a host says, "How are you doing today?" you can say, "Good, thanks." "Doing well, thanks." "Great, thanks." And then move naturally into your request. For example, "Hi, how are you?" "Good, thanks." "How are you?" "Good, thanks." "Could we get a table for two?" That is a normal interaction. Now imagine the host says, "Do you have a reservation?" You can answer, "Yes, it's under Nguyen." "No, we don't." "No, we don't." "Do you have anything available?" The phrase "it's under" is very useful. If you made a reservation under your name, you can say, "It's under Alex." "It's under Nguyen." "It's under Sarah Lee." This means the reservation is recorded using that name. Now let's talk about ordering at a counter. The staff member may say, "Hi, what can I get for you?" This is extremely common. You can answer, "Could I get a medium latte, please?" Or, "I'll have a medium latte, please." Or, "Can I get a medium latte?" All of these work. The staff member may then ask, "What kind of milk?" You might say, "Regular milk, please." "Oat milk, please." Almond milk, please. Whatever you normally use is fine. If you are not sure, you can ask, what do you recommend? That is a wonderful phrase. What do you recommend? It means, what do you think is good? You can use this phrase for almost anything. What do you recommend for coffee? What do you recommend here? What do you recommend if I want something not too sweet? What do you recommend for a first-time customer? A server may answer, our salmon is really popular. The house special is very good. If you like something spicy, I'd recommend the curry. Notice the expression, I'd recommend, that is a soft recommendation. It does not force you to choose. It simply gives you information. Now suppose you are looking at a menu and you do not understand an item. Do not be afraid to ask. You can say, what is this? But a softer version is, could you tell me what this is? Or, what does this come with? This second phrase is extremely useful. What does it come with? It means, what food or items are included with this? For example, what does the burger come with? What does the breakfast come with? Does the pasta come with a salad? You may also ask, does that come with fries? Does that come with a drink? Is a side included? Now let's talk about substitutions. A substitution is when you change one item for another. For example, the meal comes with fries but you want salad. You could say, could I substitute the fries for a salad? That is clear and polite. But in casual conversation, you might simply say, could I get salad instead of fries? Or, can I swap the fries for salad? Swap means exchange one thing for another. Can I swap the fries for salad? That sounds casual and natural. If there is an additional charge, the server may tell you. Sure, there's a $2 upcharge. An upcharge means an additional amount of money. If you did not understand, simply ask, sorry, how much extra? That is perfectly fine. You could also say, is there an extra charge for that? This is a useful phrase. Is there an extra charge for oat milk? Is there an extra charge to substitute the salad? Is there an extra charge for adding avocado? Now let's talk about dietary preferences. You may be vegetarian. You may not eat pork. You may avoid dairy. You may have an allergy. There are several ways to communicate this. I'm vegetarian. I don't eat pork. I don't eat dairy. I'm allergic to peanuts. I have a dairy allergy. Does this contain eggs? Is there any dairy in this? Is this gluten-free? These questions are important. And if you have a serious allergy, be direct. You should not rely only on polite softening. For example, I'm very allergic to peanuts. Could you please check whether this contains peanuts? That is polite but also clear. When safety is involved, clarity comes first. Now imagine you want something removed. You can say, could you leave off the onions? Could I get this without cheese? Can you make it without sauce? I'd prefer no mayo, please. Could you hold the pickles? Hold in this context means do not include. Could you hold the onions? This is common restaurant language. But if you are not familiar with it, simply say, could you leave off the onions? That is very clear. Now let's talk about the phrase on the side. This is very useful. If you want sauce separately, you can say, could I get the sauce on the side? Could I get the dressing on the side? It means you do not want the sauce already mixed into the food. You want it separately. You can also say, can I get the gravy on the side? Could I get some lemon on the side? Now let's look at drinks. You might order a small coffee, a medium tea, a large iced coffee, a medium latte, a sparkling water, a glass of orange juice. Notice that some drinks use a coffee, a tea, A latte. But if you are ordering an amount that is not treated as one individual item, you may say, some water. Some milk. Some juice. Could I get some water, please? That sounds natural. One interesting Canadian and North American café habit is the use of size words. You may hear, small, medium, large. Some cafés use special names for sizes, but you can always ask, what sizes do you have? Or, what's the smallest size? What's the largest size? If you are unsure, asking is better than guessing. Now let's talk about for here and to go. This distinction is essential. If you are staying in the café, you can say, for here please. If you are taking the food or drink away, you can say, to go please. In Canada, to go is very common. You may also hear takeout when talking about food that you take away. For example, is this for here or to go? To go please. Or, for here please. If you are ordering food for pickup, you might say, I'm here for a pickup. Or, I'm picking up an order for Alex. Now imagine the cashier asks, anything else? This phrase is extremely common. It means, do you want to order anything more? If you are finished, you can say, no, that's everything. Thanks. No, that's all, thanks. That's it, thanks. If you want another item, say, yes, could I also get a muffin? Yes, actually, could I add a cookie? The word actually here is not correcting anyone. It simply introduces an additional thought. Yes, actually, could I also get a tea? Now imagine you are at a restaurant and the server asks, are you ready to order? If you are ready, yes, I think we're ready. Yes, we're ready. I think we're ready to order. If you need more time, could we have a few more minutes, please? Could we have another minute? We're still deciding, thanks. That last sentence is very natural. We're still deciding. It tells the server that you need more time without saying go away. And sometimes a server will say, take your time. This is a friendly phrase. It means there is no need to hurry. You can respond, thanks. Or simply smile and continue reading the menu. Now let's discuss the bill. At a restaurant you can say, could we get the bill please? Could we get the check please? In Canada, bill is very common. Check is also widely understood and common in North American English. You may hear either. If you want to pay separately, you can say, could we split the bill? That means each person pays part of the total. You might say, could we split the bill between 3 people? Or, can we pay separately? If you want one person to pay for everything, we'll pay together. Now let's talk about payment. The cashier may ask, debit or credit? You can say, debit please. Credit please. Or credit card please. You may also hear, tap or insert. If you are using contactless payment, you can say, I'll tap. Or simply tap when appropriate. If you are not sure what to do, you can ask, where do I tap? Do I tap here? Should I insert the card? Simple questions are completely acceptable. Finally, let's talk about thank you. In Canada, thanks is used constantly. You can say, thanks. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you very much. The choice depends on the situation. Thanks is casual. Thank you is neutral. Thanks so much is warm. You do not need to say, thank you very much, every time someone hands you a coffee. Sometimes thanks is more natural. Now we have built the basic structure. You greet. You make a request. You add details. You ask questions when necessary. You confirm the order. You pay. And you thank the person. That is the basic rhythm. But Canadian English has some interesting details that can make your speech sound much more natural. So now, let's Move to the next part, Canadian English focus. 3. Canadian English focus. Now let's move to the Canadian English focus. This section is about the small choices that make your English sound more natural in everyday Canadian cafés and restaurants. The first thing I want you to notice is the difference between direct language and softened language. Direct language is not automatically rude. But depending on your tone and the situation, it can sound stronger than you intend. For example, give me a coffee. That is understandable. But it sounds demanding. A softer version is, could I get a coffee, please? Now listen, I want the chicken. Again, understandable. But in a restaurant, a more natural order is, I'll have the chicken, please. Or could I get the chicken, please? This is especially important for speakers whose first language normally uses a direct structure for requests. In English, we often use questions to make requests. Can I get? Could I have? Would it be possible to? You are not actually asking whether the restaurant has permission to give you food. You are using a question as a polite request. That is a very common feature of English. Now let's focus on please. Many learners think that adding please automatically makes every sentence polite. It certainly helps. But please is not magic. Tone matters. If you say, give me a coffee, please, the word please does not completely remove the commanding feeling. The structure is still direct. Compare, could I get a coffee, please? The second version is much softer. So think of politeness as a combination of structure, vocabulary, tone, and context. Another important word is sorry. Canadians use sorry in many everyday situations. Suppose someone is standing in front of the menu, and you need to get past them. You might say, sorry, could I just get by? Or you accidentally interrupt someone, sorry. Or you did not hear the cashier, sorry, could you say that again? Here, sorry does not always mean that you did something seriously wrong. It can simply be a softener. It helps open a small request. You can also use, sorry, what was that? This means you did not hear or understand. A slightly more formal version is, sorry, could you repeat that? Or, sorry, could you say that again? These are extremely useful phrases. You do not need to pretend you understood something when you did not. Asking for repetition is part of communication. Now let's look at excuse me. Excuse me is useful when you need someone's attention. For example, excuse me, could I ask you a quick question? Excuse me, is this seat taken? Excuse me, could I get another napkin? But remember that if a server is already standing at your table and speaking with you, you usually do not need to say excuse me before every request. You can simply say, could I get some water, please? Natural English is often shorter than textbook English. Let's talk about, I was wondering if. This is a very useful polite structure. For example, I was wondering if I could get this without cheese. I was wondering if you have any vegetarian options. I was wondering if we could sit outside. It sounds gentle because the request is introduced indirectly. However, it can also sound more formal. In a fast cafe interaction, you probably do not need it. Could I get this without cheese is perfectly enough. But in a restaurant, especially when you are making a more complicated request, I was wondering if can be very useful. Now let's look at would you mind. This expression is slightly more advanced. You can say, would you mind bringing us some more water? Would you mind checking whether this contains dairy? Would you mind moving this chair? There is one grammar point to remember. After would you mind, we normally use the ing form. Would you mind checking? Would you mind bringing? Would you mind explaining? Not, would you mind to check? That structure is not natural. And there is an interesting response pattern. If someone asks, would you mind bringing some water? You may hear, not at all. That means no. I do not mind. I'm happy to do it. You can also say, sure. Of course. No problem. This can be confusing because the word mind makes the logic feel backwards. If someone asks, would you mind, they are asking whether the action bothers you. Not at all means it does not bother you. Now let's talk about do you mind if. This is used when you are asking permission. Do you mind if we sit here? Do you mind if I move this chair? Do you mind if I open the window? Again, the response can be confusing. If someone says, do you mind if I sit here, and you are happy for them to sit there, you can say, no, not at all. That means you do not mind. Or, sure. Or, go ahead. Go ahead means, yes, you can do it. Now, another important Canadian phrase is no worries. You will hear no worries often. A server may say, no worries. I'll get that for you. A customer may say, sorry about that. No worries. It means something like that is okay. It is not a problem. It is casual and friendly. You can use it in many everyday situations. Sounds good is another very useful phrase. Suppose the server says, we can substitute salad for fries for an extra $1. You can say, sounds good. It means that arrangement is fine with me. The cashier says, that'll be $12.50. Sounds good. Your friend says, let's meet at the cafe at 7. Sounds good. It is a very natural phrase. You may also hear perfect. For example, here's your coffee. Perfect, thanks. Would you like that for here or to go? To go, please. Perfect. In these situations, perfect does not necessarily mean that something is literally perfect. It can simply mean that works. Great works in a similar way. Now let's look at pronunciation. In casual Canadian English, going to often becomes gonna. I'm gonna get a latte. But as a learner, you do not need to force this pronunciation. It is completely acceptable to say, I'm going to get a latte. In fact, clear pronunciation is more important than trying to sound extremely casual. The same is true for want to, which may sound like wanna in fast speech. You may hear, what do you wanna order? But you can say, what do you want to order? Both are understandable. You may also notice that could you can sound very connected in natural speech. Could you bring some water? The words may flow together. You do not need to pronounce every word with a large pause between them. English is often connected speech. For example, could you get me some water, please? The important thing is not to imitate the exact sound immediately. First understand the structure. Then practice saying it smoothly. Let's look at the word about. In Canadian English, about is pronounced naturally like about. There is no need to exaggerate the Canadian stereotype. You may hear jokes about Canadians saying a boot. Real Canadian speech is much more subtle. Regional accents vary, and most Canadians simply sound like English speakers from their particular region. So if you are learning Canadian English, focus on vocabulary, rhythm, politeness, and everyday expressions rather than trying to perform an exaggerated accent. Now let's discuss eh. You may hear Canadians use eh, especially in informal speech. For example, pretty good eh. Nice day eh. But you should not feel that you need to add eh to every sentence. That is mostly a stereotype. Some Canadians use it more than others. Some barely use it. If you hear it, understand it. But do not force it. Now let's talk about restaurant vocabulary. A server is the person who serves you at a restaurant. You may also hear waiter or waitress, although server is a common neutral term. The host or hostess usually welcomes guests and helps with seating. A menu is the list of food and drinks. A special is a particular dish the restaurant is highlighting. A side is a smaller item served with the main dish. A main or main course is the primary dish. An appetizer is a smaller dish served before the main course. A dessert comes at the end of a meal. If someone says, "Would you like to start with an appetizer?" you can say, "No, thanks." Or, "Yes, what do you recommend?" If you want to share, "Could we get one to share?" That means you want one portion for multiple people. You can also say, "Could we split one?" This is casual and common. Now let's look at portion sizes. A restaurant may ask, "How would you like your steak cooked?" You may hear, "Rare," "medium rare," "medium," "medium well," "well done." If you are not sure what these mean, you can ask, "What do you recommend?" Or, "What does medium mean here?" There is nothing embarrassing about asking. Now imagine you order something and the server repeats it back. "So that's one chicken sandwich, no onions, with salad instead of fries and a sparkling water." You can say, "Yes, that's right. That's correct. Exactly." Or, "Yes, perfect." If something is wrong, "Actually, could I change the drink to iced tea?" This is where "actually" becomes useful. It allows you to correct or update information without sounding aggressive. Now let's talk about one of the most important restaurant phrases, "Could I get?" This phrase is flexible enough to handle almost everything. Could I get some water? Could I get another fork? Could I get a clean glass? Could I get the dressing on the side? Could I get this without onions? Could I get the bill? Could I get a box for this? The last one is useful when you have leftovers. You can ask, "Could I get a container for this?" Or, "Could I get this to go?" In many Canadian restaurants, staff may provide a takeout container. You may hear someone say "doggy bag." That means a container for leftover restaurant food. However, takeout container or simply a container is clearer and more neutral. You can say, "Could I get a container for the leftovers, please?" That is completely natural. Now let's talk about something subtle, "I'll have." When a server asks, "What can I get you?" you can answer, "I'll have the salmon." This does not sound rude. It is a standard restaurant phrase. You can make it warmer with, "I'll have the salmon, please." Or, "I think I'll have the salmon." I think I'll go with the salmon. Go with means choose. I think I'll go with the salmon. This is casual and natural. You can also say, "I'll go with the chicken." "I'll go with the pasta." "I think I'll go with the house special." This is especially common when someone has been discussing options. Now let's look at "for me." If several people are ordering, you may hear, "For me, I'll have the burger." Or, "I'll do the burger." "I'll do the pasta." "I'll have the pasta." "I'll go with the pasta." "I'll do" is casual restaurant language. It does not literally mean you will perform the pasta. It means, "I'll choose that." As a learner, "I'll have" is probably the easiest structure to use. Now imagine the server asks, "How are we doing tonight?" This can sound strange. They are not necessarily asking how your health is. They may simply be checking whether you are ready to order. You can respond, "We're doing well, thanks." "We're good, thanks." "We're ready to order." Or, "We just need another minute." That is an example of restaurant English being slightly indirect. Understanding these phrases helps you participate naturally. You do not need to translate them word for word. Instead, understand their function. "What can I get you?" means, "What would you like?" "Are you ready to order?" means, "Can I take your order?" "Anything else?" means, "Do you want anything more?" "How are we doing?" may mean, "Do you need anything?" "Can I get you anything else?" means, "Is there anything else I can bring?" Once you understand these patterns, restaurant conversations become much easier. Now let's move into real situations. This is where we take the language out of the classroom and put it into everyday life. 4. Soft skills in action. Now let's move to the fourth part, soft skills in action. In this section, we will work through for real-life situations. Listen carefully to the way each conversation develops. Pay attention not only to the words but also to the attitude behind them. Our goal is to communicate clearly, politely, and confidently. Situation 1. Ordering at a busy cafe. Imagine it is 8:30 on a weekday morning. You walk into a busy cafe. There are 6 people in line. You have looked at the menu, and now it is your turn. The cashier smiles. "Hi, what can I get for you?" You say, "Hi. Could I get a medium latte, please?" "Sure. What kind of milk?" "Regular milk, please." "Anything else?" "Could I also get a blueberry muffin?" "Absolutely." "Thanks. Is that for here or to go?" "To go, please." "Okay. That'll be $8.75. You tap your card. Perfect. You're all set. Thanks. Have a good morning. You too. That conversation is short. But let's slow it down. The first phrase was, "Hi. Could I get a medium latte, please?" This is an excellent default phrase. If you are nervous about ordering in English, memorize the structure. Could I get a, then insert the item. Could I get a coffee? Could I get a tea? Could I get a sandwich? Could I get a muffin? Now imagine you are not sure what milk options the cafe has. The cashier asks, "What kind of milk?" You could say, "What options do you have?" Or, "What milk do you have?" Or, "Do you have oat milk?" If you do not care, regular is fine. That phrase is useful. Regular is fine. It means you are happy with the standard option. You can also say, "Whatever you normally use is fine." That is friendly, although slightly longer. Now imagine you want oat milk. You say, "Oat milk, please." The cashier says, "That's an extra 75 cents. You can respond, "Sure, that's fine." Or, "No problem." Or, "Okay, sounds good." If you do not want to pay extra, "Oh, that's okay. I'll just have regular milk." Notice the word just. "I'll just have regular milk." It makes the change sound casual. Now imagine you are not sure about the muffin. You ask, "Are the muffins made here?" The cashier says, "Yes, they are." "Which one would you recommend?" "I really like the blueberry." "Okay, I'll go with that one." This is a natural interaction. The phrase, "I'll go with that one," is useful when someone recommends something. Now imagine the cafe is extremely busy. You have been waiting for a few minutes. You want to ask whether your order is ready. Instead of saying, "Where is my coffee?" you can say, "Excuse me, I'm just wondering if my coffee is ready yet." Or, "Sorry, do you know if my order is ready?" These sound much softer. If you have been given a number, you can say, "Excuse me, I have number 42. I was just wondering if it's ready." That is polite and clear. Now imagine your drink arrives, but it is the wrong size. You ordered a medium. The cup is large. You do not need to become angry. You can say, "Sorry, I ordered a medium. Would it be possible to change this?" Or, "Sorry, I think I ordered a medium." That phrase, "I think," is useful when you want to point out a possible mistake without sounding accusatory. "I think I ordered the chicken." "I think this was supposed to be iced." "I think I asked for oat milk." The phrase does not mean you are uncertain about everything. It simply softens the correction. Now let's move to our second situation. Situation 2. A restaurant with friends. Imagine you are having dinner with 3 friends. The server comes to the table. "Hi, everyone. How are we doing tonight?" "Good, thanks." "Great. Can I get you started with some drinks?" You say, "I'll have sparkling water, please." Your friend says, "I'll have a beer." Another friend says, "I'll just have tap water." The server asks, "Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes?" You look at your friends. "We could use another minute, please." Of course. Take your time. This is a very common restaurant interaction. Notice the phrase, "we could use another minute." It is a polite way to say you need more time. You could also say, "Could we have another couple of minutes?" "Could we have a few more minutes?" "We're still deciding." All three are natural. A few minutes later, the server returns. "Ready to order?" "Yes, I think we're ready." You look at the menu. "I'll have the grilled chicken." The server asks, "And how would you like that?" "Could I get the salad instead of the fries?" "Sure. There's a $2 extra charge for the salad." "That's fine, thanks." "And what dressing would you like?" "Could I get the dressing on the side?" "Absolutely." Notice how many polite requests you can make without sounding excessively formal. "Could I get the salad instead of the fries?" "Could I get the dressing on the side?" You do not need, "I would like to respectfully request," that would be far too formal. Natural politeness is often simple. Now imagine your friend wants to ask about an ingredient. "Does the chicken contain dairy?" The server says, "The sauce does." "Could I get it without the sauce?" "Absolutely. Thanks." This is a simple example of asking for a modification. Now imagine you are not sure what a menu item means. You can ask, "Could you tell me what comes with the salmon?" The server explains, "It comes with roasted vegetables and rice." "Okay, thanks." "And is the rice spicy?" "No, it isn't." "Great. I'll go with that." Notice that "could you tell me" is a useful structure when you need information. "Could you tell me what this is?" "Could you tell me what comes with it?" "Could you tell me whether this is spicy?" Now imagine the server says, "Would you like to start with an appetizer?" You are not interested. "No, thanks. We're good for now." That is friendly. You could also say, "No, thank you." Or, "Not today, thanks." If you are interested, what would you recommend? The server says, "The calamari is really popular." Okay. Let's get one to share. That is natural group ordering. Now imagine the meal arrives. The server says, "How is everything?" You say, "Everything's great, thanks." Or, "Everything looks good, thank you." If there is a problem, you can say, "Actually, could I ask you something?" "Sure. I ordered the chicken without onions, but there are onions on it." "Oh, I'm sorry about that." "No worries. Could you have it remade without onions?" "Absolutely. Thanks, I appreciate it." That final phrase, "I appreciate it," is worth learning. It means, "I am grateful for your help." You can use it when someone solves a problem. "Thanks, I appreciate it." "Thank you. I really appreciate it." This is warm and natural. Now let's move to the third situation. Situation 3. A dietary restriction or allergy. This situation requires special attention because clarity is important. Imagine you have a serious peanut allergy. You sit down at a restaurant. The server asks, "Can I get you started with something to drink?" You order your drink. Then you look at the menu. You have a question. "Excuse me. I have a severe peanut allergy. Could you tell me which dishes are safe?" The server says, "Absolutely. Let me check with the kitchen." Thank you. This is an important communication pattern. When the information affects your health or safety, be direct. Do not say, "I kind of prefer not to have peanuts." That sounds like a preference. If it is an allergy, say, "I have a peanut allergy." If it is severe, I have a severe peanut allergy. That is much clearer. The server returns. The kitchen says the grilled chicken can be prepared without peanuts, but they need to use a clean preparation area. Okay. Thank you for checking. Would you like to order that? Yes, please. Could I get the grilled chicken without the sauce? Absolutely. And could you make sure there are no peanuts? Yes. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Notice that the customer is polite but does not apologize for having an allergy. This is important. You do not need to say, "Sorry to be difficult. Sorry for asking so many questions. Sorry, I'm a problem." No. You are simply communicating an important requirement. You can be polite and confident at the same time. Now imagine you are vegetarian rather than allergic. You can say, "I'm vegetarian. Are there any vegetarian options?" That is straightforward. If you want to ask whether something contains meat, does this contain meat? Is the broth vegetarian? Is there any meat in the sauce? Could you make this vegetarian? If you eat fish but not meat, I don't eat meat but I do eat fish. That can prevent confusion. Now let's move to our fourth situation. Situation 4, a problem with the order. Imagine you order a burger. You say, "Could I get the burger without onions, please?" The server repeats, "Burger, no onions." Yes, exactly. Thanks. The food arrives. You look at the burger. There are onions. This is a moment when many learners become nervous. They may think, "I don't want to complain." But asking for the correct order is not being rude. The key is how you communicate it. You can say, "Excuse me. Sorry, I think there are onions on this." The server says, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." You say, "No worries. Would it be possible to have it remade without onions?" Yes, absolutely. Thanks. I appreciate it. That is a very good model. You identify the problem. You avoid blaming the person. You ask for a solution. You thank them. Now imagine the server says, "I'm really sorry. It'll take about 10 minutes. You can say, "That's okay. Thanks for letting me know." Or, "No problem. I appreciate it." Now imagine the problem is more serious. You ordered a vegetarian meal. It arrives with meat. You can say, "Sorry, I think this is the wrong dish. I ordered the vegetarian version. If it is important, I'm vegetarian, so I can't eat this. Could you please replace it?" That is polite and clear. Now imagine your coffee is cold. You do not need to say, "This coffee is terrible." You can say, "Excuse me. I'm sorry, but I think the coffee is cold. Would it be possible to get a fresh one?" That is a very natural complaint structure. "I'm sorry, but" it introduces the problem softly. You can use it for many situations. "I'm sorry, but I think we received the wrong order." "I'm sorry, but this isn't what I ordered." "I'm sorry, but there seems to be a mistake on the bill." Notice that "I'm sorry" here does not necessarily mean you are responsible. It simply softens the interaction. Now let's talk about mistakes on the bill. Imagine the bill includes an item you did not order. You can say, "Excuse me. Could we take a look at this?" "Sure. I don't think we ordered this drink." The server checks. "Oh, you're right. I'm sorry about that." "No problem. Thanks for checking." That is enough. If you are splitting the bill, you can say, "Could we split this 3 ways?" The server might ask, 3 equal payments. You can say, "Yes, please." Or, "No, actually, we'd like to pay for our own items." That distinction is useful. Split 3 ways often suggests dividing the total equally. Pay for our own items means each person pays according to what they ordered. Now imagine someone else has paid for your meal. You can say, thanks. I really appreciate it. Or, thanks for dinner. If you want to offer to pay, let me get this. That means, I will pay. Your friend might say, no, I've got it. I've got it means, I will take care of the payment. You might respond, are you sure? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thanks. I appreciate it. These are small social expressions, but they are part of real restaurant English. English is not only grammar. It is also knowing how people manage small social moments. Let's take one more example. Imagine you are at a cafe and the staff member is clearly busy. You need to ask for a lid. You could wait silently. Or you could say, excuse me, whenever you have a moment, could I get a lid for this? This is a very polite structure. Whenever you have a moment means, when you are free. You are showing that you understand they are busy. You could also say, whenever you have a chance, could I get another napkin? This is useful in busy environments. Now imagine you need to leave quickly. You can say, could we get the bill when you have a chance? Or could we get the bill please? We're in a bit of a hurry. In a bit of a hurry means you need to leave soon. It is softer than, we're late. You can be direct when necessary, we need to leave in about 10 minutes. That gives the server useful information. Now let's take a breath. Think about what we have done. We have ordered drinks. We have asked questions. We have requested substitutions. We have discussed allergies. We have handled mistakes. We have paid. And we have used simple phrases to keep each conversation friendly. Now we are ready for a more advanced topic. Let's move to advanced nuance. 5. Advanced/nuance. Now let's move to the advanced and nuance section. This is where we look at the differences between phrases that seem similar. These differences are not always about grammar. Often they are about tone, context, and social meaning. Let's begin with 3 phrases, can I get? Could I get? Would it be possible to? All 3 can make a request. Can I get a coffee, please? This is casual and natural. Could I get a coffee, please? This is slightly softer. Would it be possible to get a coffee? This is more formal and sometimes more indirect. In a cafe, the first 2 are usually enough. If you are making a complicated request, would it be possible, can be useful. For example, would it be possible to move our reservation to 7? Would it be possible to get this prepared without dairy? The phrase gives the request a more careful tone. Now consider, I want, I'd like, I'll have, I'd like the salmon, please. This is polite and neutral. I'll have the salmon, please. This is natural when ordering. I want the salmon. This is understandable but more direct. The problem is not the word want itself. You can say, I want to try the salmon. That is perfectly natural when discussing your choice. But when placing an order, I'll have, or I'd like, often sounds smoother. Now let's look at please placement. You can say, could I get a coffee, please? Or please, could I get a coffee? The first is much more natural in most everyday situations. You can also say, can I get a coffee, please? The word please often comes at the end of the request. That is an easy pattern to remember. Now let's talk about sorry. Imagine you did not hear someone. You can say, sorry. In Canadian English, this can simply mean, could you repeat that? You may also say, sorry, what was that? Or, sorry, could you say that again? All are useful. If you use what by itself, it can sound abrupt. Sorry is usually softer. Now let's discuss excuse me versus sorry. If you want someone's attention, excuse me. If you did not hear them, sorry. If you accidentally bump into someone, sorry. If you need to interrupt, excuse me, could I ask you something? These are not strict rules, but they are useful tendencies. Now let's look at actually. This small word is surprisingly useful. Suppose the server asks, would you like fries? You say, yes. Then you realize you would prefer salad. Actually, could I get the salad instead? The word actually signals a change. Another example, could I get a coffee? Sure. What size? Actually, could I make that a tea? Again, actually helps you change your mind smoothly. Now let's look at I think. I think I ordered the soup. I think this is supposed to be medium. I think we asked for sparkling water. This can soften a correction. But do not use I think if you are hiding important information. For example, if you know you have a serious allergy, do not say, I think I might have an allergy. If you have an allergy, say, I have an allergy. Clarity matters more than softness when safety is involved. Now let's discuss the difference between no and no thanks. Suppose someone asks, would you like dessert? No, this is not necessarily rude, but it can sound short. No, thanks, is warmer. No, thank you, is slightly more formal. Not today, thanks, is friendly and casual. You can also say, I'm okay, thanks. I'm good, thanks. I'm all set, thanks. All set means you do not need anything else. All set is a very useful Canadian and North American expression. A cashier might say, you're all set. That means everything is finished. You can also say, I'm all set, thanks. For example, would you like anything else? No, I'm all set, thanks. This is a very natural way to end a transaction. Now let's look at that's all and that's everything. That's all, thanks. That's everything, thanks. Both mean you have finished ordering. That's it, thanks, is even more casual. If you are speaking with a friendly cashier, that's it, thanks, is completely normal. Now let's talk about asking for something again. Suppose you need more water. You could say, more water. But that sounds like a command. Instead, could we get some more water, please? Or could we get a refill? A refill means more of the same drink. Could I get a refill is very common. Now imagine you want to know whether something can be changed. You could ask, can I change this? That is okay. A more specific question is, could I substitute the fries for salad? Specific language helps the other person understand exactly what you want. This is an important principle. Politeness is useful. But clarity is essential. Do not make your request so soft that the listener does not know what you are asking. Now let's talk about tone. Imagine someone says, could I get a coffee, please, but their voice is impatient and their facial expression is angry. The words are polite. The overall message is not very friendly. Now imagine someone says, can I get a coffee, please, with a relaxed voice and a smile. That can sound warmer. So do not think of politeness as a list of magic words. Your tone, facial expression, timing, and body language all contribute. This is especially important when English is not your first language. You may spend so much energy remembering the grammar that you forget to breathe. Slow down. Look at the person. Speak clearly. Let your voice rise slightly in a question. You do not need to sound like a native speaker. You need to sound comfortable. Now let's discuss something called softening. Softening means making a direct message feel less strong. Here are several softeners: could, would, just, maybe, I think, I was wondering, would it be possible, for example, I need another fork. More softened, could I get another fork, please? Even softer, I was wondering if I could get another fork. But remember, more softening does not always mean better. If the restaurant is noisy and the server cannot hear you, a clear sentence is better. Could I get another fork, please, is excellent. Now let's talk about when not to over-apologize. Some learners say sorry before every sentence. Sorry, can I get water? Sorry, can I ask something? Sorry, I want this. Sorry, can I pay? You do not need to apologize for making ordinary requests. Try, could I get some water, please? Could I ask you something? Could I pay by card? You can be polite without saying sorry every time. Another common habit is saying please several times in one sentence. Could I please get a coffee, please? That is unnecessary. 1. Please is enough. Could I get a coffee, please? Natural. Now let's discuss thank you and thanks. Thank you is neutral. Thanks is casual. Thanks so much is warm. Thank you so much is stronger and more enthusiastic. You can choose based on the situation. If someone simply hands you a napkin, thanks. If someone spends several minutes helping you understand an allergy issue, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The amount of gratitude can match the amount of help. Now let's talk about I appreciate it. This phrase is excellent when someone helps you. Thanks, I appreciate it. Thank you. I really appreciate your help. It can also be useful after a problem. Thanks for fixing that. I appreciate it. It sounds sincere without being overly emotional. Now let's look at one final advanced idea, knowing when to stop talking. Sometimes learners think polite English requires a long explanation. It usually does not. Suppose you want no onions. You can say, could I get this without onions, please? You do not need to explain, I don't really like onions because when I was a child. That is unnecessary unless there is a reason the server needs to know. Good communication is often efficient. The same is true when you make a mistake. You can say, sorry, I ordered the wrong thing. Could I change it? You do not need a long apology. Sorry about that. Could I change the order? Short. Clear. Polite. So the advanced skill is not using bigger words. The advanced skill is knowing how much language the situation needs. That is a very important part of natural English. Now let's move to the practice and reflection section. 6. Practice and reflection. Now let's move to the practice and reflection section. This is your chance to speak. Please do not only listen. If possible, pause the episode after each prompt and answer out loud. I will give you a situation. Then I will give you a moment. Imagine you are at a cafe. The cashier says, "Hi, what can I get for you?" You want a medium coffee. Ask politely. A natural answer is, "Hi, could I get a medium coffee, please?" You could also say, "Can I get a medium coffee, please?" Or, "I'll have a medium coffee, please." All three are useful. Next situation. You want a medium latte with oat milk. The cashier asks, "What kind of milk?" Answer. You could say, "Oat milk, please." Simple is fine. You do not need a complete sentence. In everyday service conversations, short answers are often natural. Next. The cashier asks, "Anything else?" You want a blueberry muffin. Answer. Could I also get a blueberry muffin, please? Or, yes, could I also get a blueberry muffin? Now the cashier asks, "For here or to go?" You are taking everything with you. Answer. To go, please. Very simple. Now imagine the cashier asks, "Would you like anything else?" You are finished. Answer. No, that's everything, thanks. Or, no, I'm all set, thanks. Or, that's it, thanks. Good. Now let's practice restaurant ordering. Imagine you are sitting at a restaurant. The server asks, "Are you ready to order?" You need 2 more minutes. What do you say? Could we have a couple more minutes, please? Or, we're still deciding, thanks. Or, could we have another minute? Now the server returns. Ready? You want the grilled chicken. Order it politely. I'll have the grilled chicken, please. Good. Now you want salad instead of fries. Add the request. Could I get salad instead of fries, please? Excellent. Now you want the dressing separately. Add that request. Could I get the dressing on the side, please? Very natural. Now imagine you do not understand what comes with the meal. Ask. What does it come with? Or, could you tell me what comes with it? Good. Now imagine you want a recommendation. Ask, what do you recommend? Excellent. Now imagine the server recommends the salmon. You decide to choose it. Say, I'll go with the salmon. Or, I think I'll go with the salmon. Now imagine you want to say that you are vegetarian. Say, I'm vegetarian. Do you have any vegetarian options? Good. Now imagine you have a serious nut allergy. Say it clearly. I have a severe nut allergy. Could you tell me which dishes are safe? Excellent. Remember, when safety is involved, be clear. Now imagine your meal arrives with something you asked not to have. You ordered the burger without onions. There are onions. What do you say? Excuse me. I think there are onions on this. Could I have it remade without onions, please? That is excellent. You could also say, sorry, I ordered this without onions. Would it be possible to have a new one? Now imagine the server apologizes. I'm sorry about that. How do you respond? No worries. Or, that's okay. Or, no problem. If you want to sound especially appreciative, thanks. I appreciate it. Now imagine the server tells you it will take 10 minutes. You want to say that is okay. That's okay. Thanks for letting me know. Very natural. Now imagine you need the bill. Ask politely. Could we get the bill, please? Good. Now imagine you want to pay separately from your friends. Ask. Could we pay separately? Or could we split the bill? If you want to be very clear, could we each pay for our own items? Excellent. Now let's practice a longer interaction. I will play the server. You will answer. Ready? Hi, welcome. How are you doing today? Your answer might be, good, thanks. How are you? Good, thanks. Can I get you something to drink? You might say, I'll have sparkling water, please. Sure. Are you ready to order? Maybe you need more time. Could we have a few more minutes, please? Of course. Take your time. A few minutes later, are you ready now? You say, yes, I think we're ready. What can I get you? You say, I'll have the chicken sandwich, please. Would you like fries or salad? You say, could I get the salad, please? Sure. Anything else? You say, no, that's everything, thanks. Very good. Now let's make it slightly more difficult. The server asks, what dressing would you like? You do not know what dressings they have. What do you say? What dressings do you have? Excellent. The server says, we have ranch, Caesar, balsamic, and honey mustard. You want balsamic. Say it. Balsamic, please. Perfect. Now let's practice a correction. The server says, so that's the chicken sandwich with salad and balsamic dressing. You realize you wanted the dressing on the side. Correct the order politely. Actually, could I get the dressing on the side? Excellent. Now imagine the server says, "Sure." You respond, "Thanks." Simple. Now let's reflect. Think about your own language. When you order food in your first language, how direct are you? Do you normally use a word equivalent to please? Do you greet the person? Do you use a question structure? Do you explain your preferences? There is no need to judge your first language. Different languages organize politeness differently. The goal is simply to notice the difference. English often uses indirect request structures. Could I? Would it be possible? Would you mind? These structures allow the listener to receive the request gently. Now think about a restaurant experience you have had in Canada. Maybe you were nervous. Maybe you did not understand the server. Maybe you did not know how to ask for the bill. Maybe you wanted to change something in your order but were afraid of sounding rude. Think about that moment. What phrase from today could have helped? Maybe, could I get? Maybe, could you tell me? Maybe, could we have a few more minutes? Maybe, I'm sorry but I think there's been a mistake. Maybe, could we get the bill please? Now repeat this sentence slowly. Could I get a coffee please? Again. Could I get a coffee please? Now change coffee to tea. Could I get a tea please? Change it to some water. Could I get some water please? Change it to the bill. Could I get the bill please? Now another pattern. Could I get this without onions please? Change onions to cheese. Could I get this without cheese please? Change it to sauce. Could I get this without sauce please? Now could I get the dressing on the side please? Again. Could I get the dressing on the side please? Good. Now let's practice. I'll have the chicken please. I'll have the pasta please. I'll have the soup please. I'll go with the salmon. I think I'll go with the salmon. Good. Now let's practice the phrases that help you when you do not understand. Sorry, could you say that again? Could you speak a little more slowly, please? Could you tell me what that means? What does that come with? What do you recommend? These sentences are important because good communication is not about pretending to understand. If you do not understand, ask. That is what confident speakers do. Now let's practice a difficult but important sentence. I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake with my order. Again, I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake with my order. Now add the solution. Could you please check? I'm sorry, but I think there's been a mistake with my order. Could you please check? Excellent. Now practice a softer version. Sorry, I think I ordered the chicken, not the pasta. Good. Now practice. Actually, could I change my order? Excellent. Now, would it be possible to substitute the salad for fries? That is more formal. In a casual restaurant, you could simply say, could I get salad instead of fries? Notice the difference. Both are correct. One is more formal. One is more everyday. Natural English is about choosing the right level. Now take a final moment to imagine yourself walking into a Canadian café. You hear the door close behind you. You look at the menu. You wait your turn. The cashier looks at you. What can I get for you? You smile. You know what to say. Hi. Could I get a medium latte, please? The cashier asks, what kind of milk? Oat milk, please. Anything else? No, that's everything. Thanks. That conversation is small. But you handled it. And that is the point. You do not need perfect English to participate in everyday life. You need useful language, confidence, and practice. Take a breath. And let's move to the final part of today's episode. 7. Closing. Now we have reached the end of today's episode. Today we spent our time in cafes and restaurants, but the real subject was communication. We looked at how to order food and drinks naturally. We practiced can I get? Could I get? I'll have, I'd like. We learned how to ask questions about menus. What does it come with? What do you recommend? Is there an extra charge? We practiced making changes. Could I get this without onions? Could I get salad instead of fries? Could I get the dressing on the side? We also practiced handling moments that can feel uncomfortable. You may need to ask someone to repeat themselves. Sorry, could you say that again? You may need more time. Could we have a few more minutes? You may need to correct an order. Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. You may need to ask for the bill. Could we get the bill, please? You may need to pay separately. Could we pay separately? These are ordinary sentences. But they can make everyday life much easier. I want you to remember one idea from today's episode. Politeness does not mean making every sentence long. You do not need to speak like a lawyer. You do not need complicated vocabulary. You do not need to apologize constantly. You do not need to say please 5 times. Natural Canadian politeness often sounds very simple. Hi. Could I get? Please. Thanks. Sorry. No worries. Sounds good. I appreciate it. These small expressions carry a lot of social meaning. And remember that your accent is not your enemy. You may not sound Canadian. You may not sound like a native speaker. That is okay. English belongs to millions of people with different accents. Your goal is not to erase your identity. Your goal is to make communication easier. Speak clearly. Speak calmly. Listen carefully. And give yourself time. If you make a mistake while ordering coffee, the world will not end. If you forget a word, you can describe it. If you do not understand, you can ask. If the server speaks too quickly, you can say, sorry, could you say that again? If you need help, could you help me with this? If you need a moment, could I have a minute to decide? These phrases give you control of the conversation. And one more thing. Do not underestimate the value of short conversations. Ordering a coffee is practice. Asking for a table is practice. Buying lunch is practice. Asking what comes with a meal is practice. Paying the bill is practice. You do not need to sit at a desk for 3 hours every day to improve your speaking. You can practice while living your life. The next time you walk into a cafe, choose one phrase from today's episode. Maybe it is, could I get a coffee, please? Use it. Then, on your next visit, try another phrase. Maybe, what do you recommend? Then, could I get that to go? Then, could I get the dressing on the side? Little by little, these phrases become automatic. And when they become automatic, something wonderful happens. You stop translating. You start communicating. That is the real goal of learning everyday English. Not to memorize English. To live in English. To ask. To answer. To connect. To participate. To feel a little more comfortable in ordinary moments. So the next time someone behind a cafe counter smiles and asks, what can I get for you? Take a breath. Smile. And say, hi. Could I get a medium coffee, please? You already know how. Thank you for spending this time with me. Keep practicing. Keep listening. And most importantly, keep speaking. Your English does not have to be perfect to be useful. It only has to be used. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode of Everyday Canadian Phrases. Until then, have a great day. And if you stop by a cafe, enjoy your coffee. Thanks for listening.